Oh, yeah. Once you've had Rick Rack, you'll never go back. The ultimate motorcycle luggage rack solution. Forget those messy straps and bungee cords. Go strapless with a Rick Rack quick attached luggage system and quality bag. Head over to lawabidingbiker.com/store and get hooked up now. Rick, since you're in the studio, why don't you just handle this? Because I think you sent this to me.
Yeah, I got an email.
Props. You get lots of these. This is just one we're sharing.
Yeah, but this guy, I really appreciated this. His name is Joe Kropchek. And basically, he made a couple purchases and didn't even realize that he was eligible for the free shipping. And he wrote me an email, and I appreciate it. It said, I've recently discovered Law Abiding Biker, the YouTube videos, the podcasts, etc., and I've quickly become impressed by how thorough and quality the information, product, and now the customer service is. A small gesture on your part, unprovoked and random, has impressed me very much yet again. I'll be ordering from Lab again. In fact, I'll give Lab priority over other places, and I will be quick to refer others to Lab.
That is awesome. Keep going.
I recently just got my first Harley Davidson. 7 years ago, I started out on a Kawasaki Ninja 500. That was a great beginner bike, that it is. And I quickly moved to a Kawasaki Ninja 636, which I ended up selling in college due to snow and needing a vehicle to get me to work. Spent a couple years regretting that decision as I was bikeless until just recently when I got a 2015 Street Glide Special. Since then, I found Lab, and it's been neat seeing my bike get worked on through the videos. He's referring to the fact that basically your bike and my Road Glide and Matt's Road Glide are basically the poster bikes.
Yeah.
And so he gets to see his bike basically worked on. And he's currently stationed, and this is why I sent it to you, which I thought was very cool. I'm currently stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, as a military police officer. And so it's been cool connecting on a couple different levels with Ryan, so to speak, through the videos and podcasts. And like I said, that was a situation where he ordered a couple different orders and he paid shipping.
He ordered them separate.
He ordered them
instead of just doing it together and getting the free over $75. You get free shipping. That's what I was trying to wrap my head around.
He made a couple orders in the same day.
Gotcha.
And I caught it, and I can't always promise it, but I caught it.
You try.
And I saw it, and so I combined the orders and refunded him the shipping, and I thought it was the right thing to do, and he appreciated it, and hopefully he refers it to some other business.
Dude, that's freaking awesome, and thanks for writing in, Joe. And that just is one example of what Big Daddy Kane does there down in the store, just trying to help as many bikers as we can worldwide and be a different type of motorcycle store, which is how we've built the foundation of Law Abiding Biker Media, here to serve you guys. So thanks for that, and thanks, Big Daddy. Hey, Bikeaholics, Zero 3D has a wide variety of innovative products for your Harley-Davidson and a brand new line for your Honda Goldwing named Gold Strike.
Gold Strike.
Oh, I like it at gold. Affordable chrome lighting and comfort products. CAN bus made simple with plug-and-play lighting systems. Head over to lawabidingbiker.com/store. Check out our full line of Zero 3D products. What else I got here? This is just announcing a new free video, guys. Which is interesting before we get in right here to our main episode, that we're going to piggyback off this, but it was the census lost of Kittitas Deputy Ryan Thompson. I did a YouTube video on it, got just an immense amount of views, and the comments I couldn't even keep up anymore. And by the time this comes out, it'll be a little bit old, but we just lost another, and Kittitas County is a county north of us here in Yakima County, Washington State. And we just lost another over on the west side of Washington State just this week, last week. And they're planning the funeral.
Cowlitz County.
So 2 Washington State law enforcement officers within just the last month right here in Washington State. And so I kind of opened up in that video and just threw the camera up. It was after the funeral. I went up for a police motorcycle escort at that funeral and gave some of my thoughts. And so I thought it was appropriate to tell you guys that is on the YouTube channel. I encourage you to go check it out and join the conversation over there. It's going well. And that's kind of going to be part of what this episode is about, but it gets a lot deeper than that. So hang on, stay tuned. What do you say we do this thing?
Let's do it. Crank those throttles, people.
Yeah, baby.
It's time to go on a wild ride.
Welcome back, you freaking bikeaholics. This is the podcast for the motorcycle and majority, the Big MM, also known as the
99%.
Large and in charge of the motorcycle scene. That's right. More than any time in history, I guarantee it. By listening to this very podcast, by watching the YouTube channel, you are part of what we call the Biker Revolution. That's right. So glad you guys all tuned in. I do have just one question for you before we get started. What are you waiting for, bikeaholics?
Mount up. Let's take you on another ride.
Wild ass ride.
Wild ass.
It's all right.
Not too wild. My daughter's in the room.
Correct. We like to change it up. That's right. Ryan Urlacher here, your host of the Law-Abiding Biker Podcast and your
high-tech redneck.
There you go. You heard it right there. On the mic, we got the smooth.
Big step in. Yeah.
Ooh, love this for you.
Did you know this was a song?
I mean, now that I'm kind of listening to it, I can kind of pick up the vibes.
Yeah.
This is Big Daddy Kane.
That's why we picked it.
I didn't know you had your own theme song. Okay.
He does.
Everybody, the artist, Big Daddy Kane. This is why they started calling me this back in high school.
So we felt it was an appropriate song.
Okay.
Big step in.
Sorry, I don't have a theme song for you because you have to do multiple podcasts. We have to feel things out a little bit and figure out personalities before we can have a theme song. Although your dad may have one for you. I don't know already.
Oh God, don't know if I want to hear that.
Correct. It might not be. Oh jeez. Here we go. Hey, so we've got a great episode for you guys. You hear the voice there. Let's just start with there since I already announced that free video. Before I got one more thanks, but let's just do a quick introduction. So, how this came about, this is Big Daddy Kane's daughter. Say your name.
Hi, I'm Cheyenne.
Cheyenne, there you go. And she had a really good subject matter that she wanted to get on the mic. She is an avid podcast listener.
Yes.
And of course, she's family because, again, daughter of Big Daddy Kane here. And she wanted to, she came up with a good idea and I said, yeah, let's run with it. It's a little bit different. It's not going to be extremely motorcycle centric, but we'll throw some motorcycle and stuff in there. But
of course.
Yeah, we'll tie it in. That's right. We'll tie it in. But she had a good subject matter of what it's like because, obviously myself and Big Daddy, you all know by now we're all full-time law enforcement officers. We do this full-time too, on the side, full-time, whichever, it's both. But she wanted to do an episode on what it's like to be the daughter of a law enforcement officer. And there's actually a whole bunch of really cool bullet points she came up with that we're going to break down. But that is going to be our main topic. So there you go. And I'm going to have her tell a little bit more about herself in a moment. But we had our sponsors up front. Of course, we love our sponsors. But these people also made this episode possible. And they're our beloved patrons, our patron members. You want to start?
Yeah, we have Jeff Edmondson of Bellingham, Washington, right over on the west side of the state here, and he is top tier. We have Eric Roberts of Marion, Indiana. He is also top tier. And Frank Morales of Visalia, California.
Brad Lupnitz of Punta Gorda, Florida. Kent Maynard of Spring Hill, Florida. Andrew Geierman of Eagle Mountain, Utah. Cheyenne, you want to take the third ones here?
Okay, we have Scott Seibel. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering your name.
We butcher everybody's names. They're used to it.
I'm sorry. I feel like since y'all are patrons, I feel like I should show you a little bit more respect here. He is from the Upper Saddle River of New Jersey. He is a top tier. We have Paul DeCino of Tobyhanna, Pennsylvania, and we have George Bills. So thank y'all so much for supporting them. I know they put a lot of hard work into this, and it means a lot to them.
Look at that, man. She's got good voice, good podcast, good voice modulation.
You listen to a lot.
I know. Nice. Lawabidingbiker.com/Patreon, Patreon. Pledge a certain amount per piece of content. No risk to you because you can put a monthly cap. Get benefits, guys. We want to get you those benefits, stickers, t-shirts. You can get in that private Facebook group, that forum, which is just blowing up. It's our staple of Lab Media. And then, of course, you get access to the episodes early and live broadcasts up to top tier. Get that access to our premium videos up on request. So there you go.
That Facebook group, I'll tell you.
It's just growing.
I mean, not only is it huge with as many members as we have, but it has become a community of bikers helping bikers. And that's what we always wanted. in the last 2 days, I must have seen at least 10 posts of people saying, hey, I'm looking at new tires. What do you guys recommend? Hey, I've got a brand new bike. I'm looking to upgrade the seat. What do you guys like?
I was involved in that one.
We've seen everything. Hey, I'm looking at a new school. I'm looking at an advanced school. What do you guys like to see?
Motorcycle training.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff going on in there. And even if you're, just the minimum qualified to get to the Facebook group, it's well worth it. There's a lot of good information. Mark Arnold, our brother from Canada, he's doing a whole review of listing not only pictures. I mean, it's obviously it's just pictures, but then he's also narrating what he's doing. He's putting in a new SNS 111 motor into his bike, and he's describing what his difficulties have been and stuff. So there's a lot of cool stuff in there. And plus, there's the search option. The search option you can go through anytime. You can search by topic. Tires.
5 years of topics now.
Yeah, 5 years, anything. So it's become it's almost like an encyclopedia.
It really is.
I
call it a forum without trolls. It's troll free zone because you pay to be in there.
I'm going to take it deeper than that. It's a motorcycle encyclopedia made of love.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
of motorcycle love. Love for motorcycles. Yeah.
I feel like hugging you right now.
I know. I'd hug you if I wasn't separated by like 8 feet of table.
Would that be weird, Cheyenne, if I hugged your dad right now and we just...
Nothing but brotherly love
if
here.
I kissed him on the neck or something?
That's a little seductive there.
Kissing on the neck's probably not right, but
is that over the top?
Maybe like a tap on the butt would be all right.
I mean, whatever.
A bro tap.
Bro tap.
Right.
I'm
just
the
like
new one here,
like
so I don't.
Football. Like
I'm
in
just
football,
learning based off experience in here. I'm just soaking everything in.
You don't know what goes on in here. Oh God. All right. Well, good to have you on the mic, and I appreciate you being willing to do this. It is her first time on the mic. She, like I said, avid podcast listener. Clearly, that voice carries well, and so I appreciate that nice strong voice. So
thank you.
Why don't you tell what you're willing to tell to give the audience? I already obviously introduced you as the daughter and all that, but tell us what you want about yourself real quick.
So I'm currently finishing up my freshman year of college. I'm an elementary education major. Oh gosh, what else do I say about myself? I always feel really weird answering these questions because I feel like it's kind of like bragging about myself.
I know.
And I've never really been like that, I think my biggest thing is educating people on what I strongly believe in. And I think with this type of podcast that we're doing and some of the points I'm going to bring up, I think it's really important to educate people, especially those who aren't in law enforcement or just happen to be like motorcycle enthusiasts. I think kind of hearing stories from a daughter's perspective, and I think even parents too, because sometimes you don't realize what this type of job does to your kids or what kind of influence it plays. So hopefully I can get some parents just kind of taking a seat back and listen to my stories and maybe think, wow, maybe my son or my daughter has been affected by some of these issues too. And hopefully I can help spread awareness on everything. So
yeah, that's awesome. I'm actually highly curious because, I have two daughters and I don't know, and they're not maybe to the age where they really want to be open about that.
Yeah.
So you're at an age where, you can talk about it. And so I'm actually very interested to hear some of this because it may be some things that I'm not aware of,
Yeah. And when I asked her, she's been wanting for some time to come on here, and during spring break, we talked a little bit about it, and then at my sister's funeral, and you two, she got to meet you, and I told her, I said, what I'd like for you to do, it's obviously a motorcycle podcast, so I'd like it to be kind of multifaceted.
Yeah,
I want you, because we are LEOs and we do have a lot of LEO listeners and we have a lot of LEO supporters, as we know from our patron groups. I mean, you can talk a little bit about, what's it like being the daughter of a police officer, but I also want you to talk about some good stuff too. Like, what are the positives that you see of your father being into motorcycles, and how does that help him with stress relief and stuff? And I left it all on her, and I said, come up with some topics. And I think she came up with some great ones. I mean, I'm proud of her. I mean, she's a smart cookie. And I told her, hey, this is your ball. You get to dribble it and you get to shoot it, and let's see where this goes. And so I'm excited to see what she has to say as well.
Yep. I think the audience will find it definitely interesting. So let's just dive in. Yeah. What do you want to dive in on? Your views on, do you want to start with how we're portrayed in the media, or do you want to start of just simply being the daughter of a law enforcement officer? You kind of take the ball here. We can go any way you want.
I guess we can kind of just talk about like my position being in all this. So I am at that age. I'm 19. So I'm at that age where I'm friends with a lot of people who weren't raised the way I was. You know, being the daughter of a law enforcement officer, it definitely has its pros and its cons. One of the pros being, you know, I feel like I was raised pretty right. You know, I was told what was right, what was wrong. And, you know, my parents both made it pretty transparent about if I did something wrong, what would happen. You know, I remember there was one time we were at like a little golf shop, and my sister, they had one of those like pyramids that had all the golf balls, all the different colors, so pretty. And my sister happened to take one from the top. And we went home, and my dad had asked her, because he had never seen that golf ball before in his collection. And he had asked her, where did you get that? And of course, my sister, kind of feeling guilty at the time, I forget how old she was. I feel like she was probably around the age of like 7. I feel like we're about 2 years apart. And she had said that she had took it from the place. And so my dad drove her back and made her apologize and say what she had done. And, you know, just seeing that happen made me realize, oh crap, if I steal, you know, I'm going to get in trouble. You know, I'm going to get arrested. I'm not going to have that opportunity to go back and say, I'm sorry for taking, you know, whatever it was that I had taken. You know, so I feel like having those experience hands-on too, you know, or going to events with my dad and having to, you know, sit there and help be a role model for some of the kids in the community, you know, whose parents both were in law enforcement. You know, having to sit there and be the role model for them. And I think a lot of what my parents have taught me really plays into who I am today, you know, and I guess that kind of goes into, you know, listening to what people say and their assumptions about law enforcement and why it drives me up the wall. Like it just frustrates me when people feel like, oh, these cops are a bunch of pigs and they're so rude and so disrespectful. And it's just like, if you don't treat them with respect, you know, you get what you deserve. If you're treating them, you know, like a bunch of assholes, you're going to get treated like that. You know, so it's like if a cop pulls you over, you know, for a minor thing like speeding, for example, if you get a ticket, take the ticket and thank them. Don't sit there and try to protest it and be like, well, you didn't see that. And don't be rude and disrespectful like that. Like, just respect them, and they're doing their job. And just like you have a job, you know, and I feel like everybody here in life has a purpose. I feel like nobody is wasted space. And you are created to have some sort of purpose. And people who choose to go into law enforcement, their purpose is to help serve others. You know, some of those people are some of the ballsiest people I've ever met. And they have bigger balls than, you know, probably Joe Schmo down the road who's working at Jack in the Box for the rest of his life. You know, like it takes a lot of balls to get out there and risk your own life for somebody else who probably could give a rat's ass about you. And I just think it's so disrespectful how they're treated sometimes. Now, granted, this also kind of goes into how law enforcement's portrayed in the media. You know, you do have those people that, you know, you'll have an officer that happens to shoot at somebody and the person gets killed. That's a whole big controversy. And, you know, it kind of makes like everybody else look bad. So I completely understand that, you know, one officer does that, it makes everybody look bad. And I can see how people believe that, but it shouldn't have to be like that. You shouldn't have to make that assumption that because of what one officer did, you know, everybody else is going to do. And even then you have to look at the situation. What happened? What made the officer shoot? You know, I feel like a lot of people forget to look at that too. There is like, oh, he just shot, so therefore he's, you know, a completely bad person and I hate all cops in general. When I feel like people should look at the backstory and realize what were the events and what is the context of that in order to lead up to that sort of decision. You know, and I feel like the media will only put what they think is juicy, you know, and all this stuff. I think that's kind of like where like the whole fake news idea comes in, you know, is like you don't have that context, and the media will sometimes purposely leave that out in order to get viewers to keep watching and to see what happens next. And so, I don't know, it just drives me up the wall.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. And obviously, and you're smart enough, you know, that's what sells commercials. That's all they care about, you know,
it shouldn't come down to financial things like that.
I know. I agree. Are you hearing a lot of, because you're in college, to piggyback off that a little bit, I know that there tends to be a lot of liberal views overall in our college system. And that's fair to say. We're not going to get extremely political here.
Yeah.
I think everybody knows that and would agree with that. You know, there are different colleges and things where it's less, but we've seen that portrayed here even recently. Are you finding that to be the case? Are there a lot of liberal views? Is there more liberal views by students or is it half or what?
I feel like the liberals definitely do play a role in that, but especially at my school, I mean, it's not like a big, you know, it's a smaller D1 school, I would say. It's got the D1 feel, but it's also got that feel of, anybody and everybody, and everybody's pretty tight, so you meet somebody, you'll kind of know them for a while, and that's the thing too, is like, if you have a political view about something, usually people will know how you stand on that. And I feel like as a person, if you don't express your views, then people won't know like what you stand for. I mean, like I've had friends, that are completely into like the smoking and drinking and stuff like that, and it's like, they'll ask me to go out and, go smoke a bowl with them. And I'll just have to sit there and be like, no, I don't think that's right. Not only because I am going to be a future teacher, but just, I mean, personally, I only believe in marijuana for like medical uses, for example. I'm not really in it for recreation. I think, why would you spend your money on that when you can spend on like investments or something, do something wise with it.
Smart girl, man.
But, teach your own. If you want to go out there and smoke a bowl and work at Jack in the Crack your whole life, go on with your bad self. Like, I'm not here to judge you. Everybody chooses to live their life like that, and I feel like making your stance about that is really important, and especially when it comes to law enforcement too. I give them the most respect, because it's like, if somebody were to be like an asshole towards my dad, I wouldn't appreciate that. He's just out there doing his job, and obviously that's me being a little bit biased, but, I think it, not even like outside of law enforcement, if you see somebody, just show them some respect. And if you're going to be, a meme angry person for no reason, then, sorry that your day was so shitty, but don't reflect that on somebody else, unless they did like some harm to you, and again, it just comes down to expressing your views. If you don't want people to ask you, like for me, for example, like people know not to ask me to go smoke with them because they know I don't really stand for that, and people know how I feel about law enforcement, for example. So, a lot of my friends have I've told them my story and things like that. And they've kind of learned from it. And, and they've even admitted that they've, thought twice about law enforcement, that maybe they're not just a bunch of dicks, they're people out there doing their job, and whether you like it or not, that's what they're there to do. And that's their purpose. Their purpose is to go out there and make a difference and hopefully stop this world that's become so hateful. I feel like society nowadays has just become so hateful and so cruel. And it sucks to see the next generation have to go through that. So I feel like if there's people like me that get to kind of voice the opinion, and talk about, I mean, I'm not calling you guys old or anything, but it's like,
we are old,
but talk
FYI,
about
news flash.
No shit. What? Just like talk about from like a younger person's perspective. I may have only been alive 19 years, but I feel like out of those 19 years, I've learned a few things. And I feel like if this is my chance to help influence others and make them think twice, then I feel like that's me doing my purpose.
Awesome. I love it. She's wise. She's wise for 19. Now, tell me this. So I'm at college with you and I'm your age, 19. And I say some stuff like that, like, oh, fuck the police, pigs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're all dirty. How do you handle personally something like that? Because I know it affects you, I'm sure. When you hear that crap, you've already said that.
I feel like it depends. If it's somebody close to me or one of my friends, I'll kind of just be like, hey, like, and I'll kind of sit down with them. And I'm somebody who believes in, you don't know somebody unless you've sat down, like you've gotten to know them. I feel like not only does everybody have a purpose, but everybody has a story. And so when you get to sit down with them and you talk to them about their story, it's interesting to see what they hear. Because a lot of times from people, what I've heard is that's like, oh, well, there was this one cop and he was a complete dick to my mom and she got pulled over for going 5 over. Right. And so therefore I think all cops are dicks. And I'm like, that's not how it works.
Whenever they say it's 5 over, it was 15 over.
It was 15. They got it reduced to 5.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
What I tried to teach my kids, as I said, from my experience in 22 years, as
a Leo, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I've tried to explain to my kids that generally, in my experience, there's 2 types of individuals that don't like law enforcement. There's either individuals that have been in the system for a long time, typically numerous times for violations and such, and they don't like law enforcement because we stand in the way of them wanting to complete the deeds that they want to do for whatever purpose, whether that be drug addiction, stealing,
financial gains,
whatever. The other group is generally somebody who really does not know anything about law enforcement, and they've been influenced by other sources.
Right, exactly, and like social media.
Those are the individuals that could potentially be people that are in liberal colleges that are protesting against police because they're protesting against an instance. Take, for example, Ferguson. we now know, and it's been, Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, came out and said none of what the media portrayed happened with that officer.
Right.
Actually happened. Okay, he was not brutally slain as social media, the initial news, and these witnesses. In fact, the witnesses all came out to have been liars. And in fact, they were going to prosecute them for lying.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Holder, the Attorney General, had to come out and admit that. Now, you notice the media did not take that on very strongly.
And see, that's when the media kind of goes through and they pick and choose what they want.
I know, but what I'm getting at is those people that believe that, they may not have ever had any negative, anything negative with police, but they believe that.
Yep.
And so that's why I've tried to tell my girls, there's two types of people that do not like police or do not like, I take it even further. They do not like law and order, period. Mm-hmm. And those could also be anarchists. We see that in our job. There's some people that just don't like.
They're always the first ones to call 911. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You know it too.
But they're so funny. But it's those are the people. They've never had anything negative, but they believe so much that these individuals are bad, or they believe in anarchy that much that they do that. And even though the story could come out and be totally false, even though all these NBA stars and football stars came out and the whole propaganda that came out of it, and when it came out and it was all false, and that officer did nothing wrong, he's still not working as an officer, and it ends up being but those people believed it, and didn't matter what was going to come out. Yep. Obama could have done a nationally televised newscast and could have required that every person watched it, and I guarantee you, some of those people still would not have believed it. Yep. You're not going to change their minds. And so I've tried to tell my kids, listen, it's not your job to change their mind. And that's why I'm interjecting in now, because she was making those statements like I'm going to talk to them. I tell Cheyenne, it's not your job to change their mind. If you're talking to them and you give them your points and they listen to you like they should, and they can give you their points and you can listen to theirs. But at the end of the day, not everybody's going to agree. And some people just are not going to like this profession. They're not going to like the people that are in the profession.
I think that's like what's hard for me too, is I feel like I've always been the person where I do have a pretty big heart, and I always reach out to others. Like when I see people struggling or they don't understand something, I'm always the first one to get up and go educate them or help them get educated. Because I feel like as a society, not only when it comes to law enforcement, but we just need to become more educated. I feel like people will just take things off the news, for example, and they think that all of a sudden they're like Gandhi and they know everything. And I'm like, do you even know some of the backstory or some of the context behind some of these things, And it's hard, for people to go through that. And, and my goal isn't to try to completely change people's minds. Absolutely not. I feel like everybody's entitled to their own opinion, whether I agree or I disagree with it. But I just feel like people overall in general just need to become like more educated, and people need to be able to have the ability to listen to others. It's easy just to talk, but can you actually sit and listen? I think that's one skill that we as a society also need to work on, is just sitting and listening. Because being a good communicator isn't always just being able to say what you have to say. Being a great communicator is somebody who can sit, listen, evaluate, and then respond appropriately.
Yep, I agree. And boy, we could go down a rabbit hole with that. I'll just say, and social media is a lot to blame for that, because it's easy to be loud when you're behind a keyboard and just say whatever impulse you want. And that art of what you just said, actually face to face and listening. Those same people that do that on social media never do that to your face. They're too cowardice, but it's so easy when you're behind your smartphone and you're like, I don't agree with him and I don't even know who that guy is. I'm just going to say F you. So
I can tell you one thing I do agree with, and it's coming up right now, and it's 100% truth.
Really?
Is Rick Rack.
Yeah. Nice, bro. That's an experienced freaking guy.
Are you searching for the easiest and quickest detachable luggage system for your motorcycle? Rick Rack has just what you're looking for. Forget all those frustration straps and bungee cords that can come loose and slap your paint. Check out one of Rick Rack's awesome quick attached strapless luggage rack systems. This father and son team designed something really special that you can't find anywhere else. Yep, and these guys ride, so they truly understand the needs of bikers. The Rick Rack quick attach system is strong, durable, and secure with a lockable system. Also, check out their full line of quality touring bags to accommodate your quick detach system. Once you use Rick Rack, you'll never go back.
Rick Rack.
What are you waiting for, Bikeaholics? Head on over to the Law Abiding Biker store and check out our full line of Rick Rack systems and bags. And don't forget the GoPro mounts as well. Great products. Go over to lawabidingbiker.com/store.
Nice. That's right. Big Daddy Kane right there in stock, ready to go. All right. So I just want to piggyback one more thing. And what you said is, yeah, that's one of the things too, is these days, the media before all the social media and the internet and all that, the public had a higher trust in the media to be that link in between, everything. You kind of trust them. It's kind of been eroded over time. And there's so many news sources now that you're right. A lot of people, and Rick, you said it too, will base their opinion off one news story, and they're not even sure of the news outlet that gave it to them. So these days, I just, everybody knows, that has a level head. You really have to be really careful about where you get your news sources. And then you have to, these days, unfortunately, if you're really interested in a story, you kind of have to do your own personal background investigation. Because a lot of the, I'll talk just about a couple, a lot of the times to sell articles, like you said, the news will show videos, and they do that all the time, and they'll show a very small portion of that video. Well, if you go do their own research, you'll find the full video yourself, and I guarantee after you watch the full video, you go, clickbait. Yeah, that's what those are. And I think society, because of social media overrun and internet and all that, which are all good things too, you can get like us right here. We're worldwide right now. We do live worldwide from my studio here in little Yakima, Washington area, so we can get our message out, but there's a lot of people putting out bad messages using the platform. So you really have to sift through it, and go, get those full videos yourself and do your own research. So I'll leave it at that. But
yeah, I saw a news story recently where they were saying that the public's trust in, it used to be one of the most respected careers, in the old days, in the 70s and even into the 80s, were newscasters. You respected, Dan Rathers and these guys, that what they were telling you, and they always stayed neutral and stuff, and in whatever their personal
opinion-based news. Yeah.
And now people just don't believe it, and it's pretty well obvious anymore. And I think that's even bled into, unfortunately, I think that's bled into politics. I believe that's bled into federal law enforcement, and it's never happened in my agency, but I bet you in certain areas it's even bled into municipal, county, and state law enforcement, where politics have, kind of taken hold and kind of pushed, certain ways or the way things are handled and done, because of the political atmosphere. And I'm thinking of things like Chicago back when there was some corruption there, and in other cities as well. So, I mean, it's news anymore. You're right. You have to look for it. And I feel very fortunate that where we're at, we've had a couple different shootings. We've had in custody deaths, and the local news media, which we share with Yakima, has been very fair. They realize, I remember a shooting when I was first hired, and there was one reporter that was from LA, and she was an investigative reporter in LA, and she was very pushy, and I'm going to release the name, and I went and got a copy of the search warrant, and our chief said, you do that, we're never dealing with you again. All we're asking for is a couple days, so that we can get everything put together. And that news director had to tell her to calm her heels. Now it's they know what it is. Okay, we're going to give you this basic information. We'll have another news conference later today. We'll have all the information within this time frame, and it works very well. And they get along very well with them. But it's not like that in every community.
No, it varies
LA
greatly.
Or you hear the horror stories in these big towns in Seattle and stuff.
Unfortunate over there. Yeah, with what those guys deal with.
But yeah, I mean, you have a lot of bias in colleges, and depending on where it's at and everything. So, I mean, you just got to keep track. And I've always said, as a law enforcement officer, when I stop the person, they're like, don't you have anything better to do? The first thing I do is kill them with kindness. And by the end of the stop, they're just like, I'm sorry. And I just for the next guy, maybe it's a little bit easier.
Yep.
Doesn't mean that they may not be getting a ticket.
Right.
And I explain that to them when it's done. But sometimes I don't give them the ticket. And I say, I hope you learned from this. Your attitude, you deserve the ticket. But I don't give tickets based on attitude.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, okay. So maybe I did alter their view.
Yep. Every contact has some sort of lasting, effect. So yeah. And more, those are how law enforcement comes into contact with the public the most, is through simple daily traffic stops.
Number one,
whether you're a criminal or it has nothing to do with that. It's the average public, everybody, my wife, my daughters will come in contact, get stopped or something. So yeah, it can.
Either there or when you're at lunch and you're on break and, hey, as long as you're here, I've always wanted to ask.
Yeah, I know, dude. Yeah. No,
hey, I hope I'm not bothering you.
Right. No.
Not bothering. I got a quick question.
My mouth is full.
I got a quick question.
Yeah.
Can my neighbor really trim his trees over? Can I trim my neighbor's trees if they're over my fence line?
I got a ticket 16 years ago.
I'm not in code enforcement, so
these are all cop jokes. Yeah, just stuff we deal with. Yeah. And if you're in the public, you'll definitely get interrupted for sure. Yeah, that's what we do, dude. All right. So what else do you want to, where do you want to move on to from there? Cheyenne, we'll let you kind of, what else you got to say?
I guess kind of talking about experiences too. I mean, right out of the gate, I'm going to say I didn't have, like a really bad experience growing up. I didn't have some traumatic, backstory about, being a daughter in law enforcement. I'm going to say that right out of the gate. I just feel like when you hear different people's stories and their experiences, I feel like you can learn from that. And so hopefully with me talking about how, my dad being in law enforcement has affected our family, hopefully, the parents out there will see, oh, well, crap, maybe I need to do this, this, and this. Or maybe, again, like when you do have younger kids, like you have Ryan, and they don't speak up about that kind of stuff. Hopefully I can be that voice for them if they are feeling like this, and again, everybody has a different story. And I feel like just hearing somebody's is really beneficial to hear because everybody has a story.
I agree.
And I just want to be heard sometimes.
Yep. I agree.
I got a topic I've always wondered. I've asked her mom this, and I'm sure you've probably asked your wife this, but I've never asked my kids this. And this is why I mentioned this as a question.
Yeah.
And, how do you deal with, now in this case, you're away from home because you're in school, but as a child, knowing that every day when your father or mother, depending on the situation, leaves the house, how do you deal with that, knowing that you may never see them again? That may be the last time that you see them leave. I'm not trying to bring it down, but
no, that's an awesome question. Let me
but it's a real situation that I feel like people don't talk about.
I'm glad you asked it.
They think it's like a 9 to 5, or work in a cubicle, but it's like these kind of jobs aren't like that. And I feel like a lot of people don't have a lot of experience or knowledge about that kind of career unless you've been in it, unless your parents have, or you yourself have been in it. I feel like when I was younger, I didn't really acknowledge it as much because I was so young. I was just kind of like, okay, he'll come back. Or, I remember coming home from school, like my elementary school used to be right next door to our house. So I remember having to walk in up the front and I'd open the door really quietly. I have to go in and shut the door very quietly, because daddy has work in the evening. And I remember being young and not understanding it. And my mom would just say, the roles are switched. She goes, I sleep at night. I work during the day. Dad sleeps during the day. He works at night. And that's just kind of, and a lot of other kids don't really know that, so walking in and having to slowly close the door, and grabbing whatever snacks I wanted and then just going to a spot that was away from the bedroom so that he could sleep, stuff like that. I mean, which isn't bad. I wouldn't say it's affected me negatively, but I feel like just now being older and understanding that, I think has really helped. And then and that's the thing too, is I feel like a lot of people haven't experienced that. And knowing that, your mom or your dad won't come home. I feel like I didn't really start acknowledging that until I was... This
is what I want to know.
Probably around 10 or 11. Okay. I feel like that's kind of when mentally I started grasping that concept, because as a young kid, you think nothing can happen and you think everything is picture perfect. And then once I kind of started getting to that age and getting more into middle school, that's kind of when I started thinking about it a little bit more, and that's why, in the beginning I did say, people who are in law enforcement or, or even like firefighters or paramedics, they have some of the biggest balls, like people that work in Jack in the Crack, for example. Again, not doubting you, you do you, but it's like, you won't put your life on the line like that. Even if somebody's completely disrespecting you, but yet you're still going to go out of your way to, kill them with kindness and protect them. And that's kind of what rubs me the wrong way, is that people don't respect that, and having to see my dad be away from home. When I was younger, I didn't really pay attention to it. I was just like, oh, dad's not here. He's at work, but as I got older, it was sad sometimes, back in high school, I did 3 years of competitive cheer for my high school, and, him not being at some of my events or some of my competitions was really hard, because he would either be sleeping or there would just be so many people that I know deep down it would kind of overwhelm him, and as I've noticed too, growing up, we go to a restaurant and my dad sits facing the door, and that's how it's always been. Nobody else sits in that spot except for my dad.
Yep, we did that last night at the restaurant.
And I feel like a lot of people don't get that.
My family knows his back doesn't go to the door.
And that's kind of affected me too.
Yeah, see, that's funny. I don't even think about it. My family knows. They're trained, yeah.
Yeah, or even like now in college, if I go out with some friends, I'm the one who sits towards the door because I think of that kind of stuff. And like I told somebody that one time because they were like, why do you persist on sitting there? And I'm like, little do you know. And I'll give them like a quick 30-second of why I do it. And they're like, oh, and I was like, usually this is my dad's seat, but since I'm out on my own, it is my seat. So I will sit here and do not judge me for that. Yeah, that's kind of my spot.
I think Cheyenne never really showed any of the concern or anything related to that. She did express that's
why I like hearing it, because my daughter doesn't show any of it. Yeah, so it's interesting.
Cheyenne did express, especially through her mom to me, about, she's really sad that you're missing state comps, but she understands, or missing Christmases.
Yeah.
Or Thanksgivings and stuff. Mickey, on the other hand, my junior that's getting ready to be a senior, she always seemed to be pretty hard, never really talked about things. And I'm only bringing this up because of the topic.
Yeah.
I remember late last year, I think it was maybe end of the summer, I get a text. I had to work late. The night before, I got into a pretty big dragged out fight with a guy. He was schizophrenic, mental health issues, decided that he was going to take a pin and try to stab me with it. And I handled it appropriately. And so she overhears this conversation that I'm having with Cindy. And Cindy's she's been in law enforcement for almost 22 years. She's she's not an officer, but she's in records, was a telecommunications and is in records, but she's been around it. So she understands the whole concept of the career. And I'm telling her about it. And I'm guessing Mickey must have heard this conversation, because all of a sudden the next day I'm held over with a late call, and it was a late domestic violence. Because of course, when you work 12-hour shifts and you're getting off at 6:30, when is the best time for two people to get in a knocked out, dragged out fight, right? The best time is always at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, right? You can't sleep, and just wait till later. You got to do it right then at 3 or 4 in the morning, right? That's always the best time.
It is, yep.
And so I was running late, and I was probably about good 2.5, 3 hours late. And of course, I text Cindy and said, hey, I'm going to be way late. This is going to be a long one. This is a felony assault. And out of nowhere, I get this text saying, hey, Dad, I hope everything's good. And it's from Mickey. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I'm just typing up a report. So I go home and I go to sleep. When I wake up, Cindy's like, Mickey was really stressed out because you weren't home at the time that you were supposed to be home. And she had never expressed anything like that before. And so I think that was her. Obviously, it wasn't at 10 years old. Yeah. But I add that little story to it because I think it does. There is an age, I think, for kids where it clicks.
The realization.
It is really he dangerous. May not come home today, whether it's a car accident or is it that he's just late? And it's a very hard balance for me and you and all of our listeners that are LEOs or firefighters or paramedics as to how do we balance that? When do we text them, or how much do we tell our kids, hey, because if I'm an hour late because I'm typing a report, I don't think it's really necessary. I don't feel always that it's necessary for me to text my kids and saying, hey, I'm going to be an hour late from work.
Right.
They should just, okay, he's an hour late. He's probably working on reports.
But see, sometimes as a kid, I feel like once you get to that age and it clicks, I think sometimes maybe giving that verbal confirmation, because I mean, I remember growing up too, I know what time dad leaves for work and I know what time he comes home.
And that's why I'm bringing this up.
If he's not home on time,
that's why I'm bringing this up. That's why I'm saying for all of the LEOs, firefighters, because we have a lot of firefighter listeners and fans, and our brothers in fire service. And of course, let's not forget telecommunicators. We have a lot of dispatchers that are, they're all, let's just say
military, whole other situation. If you're overseas, we could,
medical, I can't imagine being in that position.
Medical personnel, we really, this is a very larger group. We don't really want to just, we're saying this as LEOs per se, but we're saying
that's our
really
expertise. So
the service industry in general, whether it's hospitals, they all have this in a little bit way, shape, or form. Ambulance, et cetera, EMTs, but it's good to hear this because when that happened, it never happened with her. But when this happened with Mickey, it made me start thinking about it. And then all of a sudden she brings it up just now. And I never knew that she had this realization. So for those with younger kids, maybe there is a time where you talk to them and say, hey, if daddy's ever, do you ever worry about this?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't worry about it. Oh, okay. Or do you say, if you do worry about this, mom will know where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
So then you funnel it through the mother. That's one option. But I got to the point to where I told Mickey, if you're ever worried where I'm at because I'm not home at a certain time, you can talk to your mom or you can text me. Well, I don't want to bother you because I know that you're busy. Well, so what I found out from Cindy since then is there are times where she'll be like, is dad working over? What's he doing? She'll text him. She wants to know why I'm late. And we're not talking like a half hour. Like if it's a couple hours, she's starting to wonder, why isn't dad home? He's always home by this time. So it's an interesting conversation. We're bringing up some deep stuff here that I never would have thought of until these conversations started happening. And so that's why we're talking about the deep stuff that's kind of we're going down this LEO eccentric conversations. And that's why I told Cheyenne, it's good to talk about this stuff, but then I also want to make sure that at some point at the end of this, we start talking about what are the things that you saw that helped your dad?
Right.
And for me, that's of course motorcycling and stuff like that. So I want to.
Oh, we'll get there for sure.
Get there so that.
But even if we
it doesn't seem like we're all Debbie Downer here.
We're not.
But I think this is information that will be valuable for young cops that are listening, or young firefighters, or paramedics, or telecommunicators that are.
And even just the general public.
Through this, or the general public, because you know what?
Yeah, it's behind the scenes.
There are guys in jobs, welders, and far other jobs that are also very, very dangerous. Truck drivers. I think of stories that Russ told me where his kids don't know when they're little, don't know where he's at. Mm-hmm. He's traveling around the country, and of course Sherry knows where he's at, and he has to depend on, he has to call and talk to him, but.
Yep. Russell Roberts, one of our patron members. Yes.
It's got to be the same thing. The kid's wondering, oh, how's dad doing? You know, that's a dangerous job, driving every day, driving a big rig, driving in the middle of the wintertime. Maybe this is all stuff that I think it's more than just police. It's bigger than just, a little pin dot. I think we could take that a bigger circumference of the deal, and draw it, enlarge it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, knowing we are, we could go off in a ton of different tangents. We are keeping it Leo specific here because that's what it's about. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Just like I say, we could go for hours, but it's interesting to hear that because my daughter, oldest, is about 13 now. So and with social media now, obviously she has access to that. It's heavily monitored. But before, when she was younger, when the news was on and there was a report of another slain law enforcement officer, it would quickly get muted. We would change the channel. We kind of kept her from it, but she got to a certain age, maybe around 12, and she's 14 now. Sorry if I said 13. And now she has she's grown up enough. And so she follows my, Twitter and Facebook, and she sees when I post another law enforcement. She knows I went to the funeral. And so I think that, at this point, she's fully aware, has become fully aware that it's dangerous, and there's actually police officers in the state dying, the last couple of weeks.
And I think that's the thing too, is, compared to your daughter and I, when I was that age, and when those stories would come up, my parents wouldn't really mute it. because I feel like at a young age, me personally, I feel like I really benefited from that. I mean, I obviously don't remember the very first story that I heard about an officer getting killed in the line of duty, but when it would come up, I would look over at my mom. My mom would be like, that's why you always have to love on your dad. You have to always tell him that you love him because that kind of stuff can happen, and she kept it very real and she was very transparent with us. And that's what I love about my mom is she's always been one to keep it real. She'll never beat around the bush, so it's like, if you would see a story like that, she would be like, she wouldn't say directly, that's going to be your dad. But, she would just be like, remember that could happen. And I feel like once you get to that age and you realize that kind of stuff, I feel like, maybe not blocking those kind of stories from your kids would really help. Now, obviously every kid is different, but for me personally, I feel like I really benefited from that, and that also helped me build my respect for those in uniform, not only, in law enforcement, but also firefighters, EMTs, all those jobs that are not everybody's first pick, and so that kind of plays in that. And I think the thing too that I wanted to really do with this conversation is really bring not just like the cons, like my experience, but some of the pros about it too. I feel like with people being in law enforcement, we can also talk about like mental health issues, and that's why, with my dad doing what he does with all this and riding motorcycles, I think mentally that's really good for him. I feel like a lot of officers now don't put their mental health first. And that's one thing that I really do advocate. I've written so many papers about PTSD and anxiety and depression and all this stuff from law enforcement officers, but they either don't have the resources to get treatment. They refuse to because, I'm a man. I don't need that. I can just shut up and crack open a beer and just sit on my patio, or they feel like it's not necessary. And I feel like, especially in today's day and age, taking mental health and really focusing on that is really important, and that's why for my dad, I mean, obviously he's not the type that's going to go sit down with a counselor and talk about his feelings, but if it's getting on the motorcycle and going for a 2-hour ride and doing stuff like this and getting his hands dirty and doing something that's not, so hands-on like law enforcement, for example, I feel like that's really helpful. And I feel like a lot of officers now should really tune into that and maybe take a step back and think, my body may be physically healthy, but mentally am I healthy? And I feel like people, when you think about being healthy, you only think about physically, but we need to start thinking more about mentally. How are you mentally doing okay up there? If you want to be the best parent that you can for your child and mentally you're not there, some of that stuff can affect your kid. Like when my dad would come home from a really bad shift and he would be kind of angry and bitter about it. At that young age, I never understood why he was upset. But of course, now if I hear a story about somebody, beating the crap out of him and saying, I'm going to kill your family and all this stuff, I'd be pretty worked up too. And again, I feel like not everybody has to go to a counselor or pay to do that because not everybody can afford it or have that resource. But I feel like having those healthy alternatives to get that stress out, and things like that, like riding a motorcycle, for example, or if you're really into like physical fitness, going out and doing that. Having those healthy alternatives are really beneficial, not just for law enforcement officers, but just people in general. And that's when it also comes down to communicating with people and finding out about their stories. You never know what's going on behind closed doors. You never know what people are going through until you sit down and talk to them.
Yep. And you know what they say? You never see a motorcycle parked in front of a shrink's office for a reason. With that, we got to do this real quick. And then I want to follow up with some of that. There we go. Hey, Bikeaholics, searching for new and exciting motorcycle products? 03D has just what you're looking for. Check out their wide variety of innovative products for Harley-Davidson and Honda Goldwing motorcycles. 03D's got your back with chrome and black parts, lighting, other comfort products. No modifying, cutting, grinding, or welding for an easy installation. Yep, you know what that equals. Less time installing, more time riding. 03D has a design team with over 40 years experience with a passion for design and innovation. CAN bus made simple with a plug-and-play lighting system. They pride themselves on great customer service. Got a question? Get in touch with them. Email sales@03.com. Give them a call, 715-808-0027. Check your local Harley or Honda dealership and ask for Zero or Gold Strike parts. A new leader has emerged, so check out 03D's custom line of those Gold Strike products for Honda Gold Wings. I like it, gold. Help support us. Head over to lawabidingbiker.com/store. Check out our full line of 03D products and Big Daddy Kane, Grunt over there. They can also assist you and find the answers to your questions and all that kind of stuff. We got some great information on our listings over there too, guys. So
yep, and they have a great customer service and tech support too. So if we don't know the answer, we can definitely get you in contact with them, and they can answer the stuff that we don't know.
Exactly. So to piggyback as we keep going down this road on a good track here. So you brought up some good points about mental health. I could go down a rabbit hole on this too, so I'll keep it very simple.
That's a complete separate podcast, I feel like.
It is.
Separate conversation.
It totally is. It totally is. We could just do a whole thing on that. I will tell you briefly, in the 24 years I've been a law enforcement officer, and I know Rick can tell you too, when we started, you didn't speak of mental health. It was absolutely 100% taboo. If you did, you were weak and you were kicked out of the nest, and you would be a law enforcement officer very short amount of time. Over the years, it has gotten better. It's still not good. It depends on which agency you're with. People are starting to recognize it. It's talked about more openly. There are more programs in place. There are officers seeking those counseling sessions, critical incident stress debriefings, and all that kind of stuff. It's still, even today, I'll say, a lot of agencies and their administrations want to make it sound like we have an open and we support our officers and we're okay with mental health. I will tell you that it's still somewhat taboo. And a lot of people, even though the resources are there and you're not going to get fired for it, they're still afraid of it. But it is getting better. And there are some departments that are even doing simple things like paying for an offering at least once or twice a year, that the officer, you don't have to go and say anything, but if they want to go, it's kind of, there's different views on whether that should be forced or not. But there you go. I know Rick can agree. That was when we were first cops, you shut your mouth. You could see the most gruesome things in the world, hangings, people with their heads blown off. You do not talk about it afterward. You shut your mouth and you go home. SIDS, deaths, all that kind of stuff. So at least there's open conversations, and I think it will get better in time. So that's all I'll say with that.
Yeah,
without going deep.
I agree. I will tell you, seeing 7 autopsies in 1 year. Mm-hmm. Probably the worst one was a guy that used to just beat the hell out of his gal that he was married to for 25 years, and they opened her up, and her abdomen was black and blue because she got a daily beating. And him looking at me and telling me, you know what was really fun? I didn't kill her. But if you were going to arrest me for something, you should probably arrest me for having sex with her in the park in front of people, because she loved that shit.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at him and I'm like, I wish I could just choke you out right now, motherfucker, you piece of shit.
Yeah.
And he got off on that. And, I still have my suspicions. I couldn't prove anything. And, but
that is the system.
But that was young in my career. I was a young detective, and you just choke that stuff down and you deal with it. And fortunately, I had a very strong wife that I could talk to. And that's the other key thing that you have to have. You have to have good support and good people. But I agree with you on that. I think it's changed a little bit.
It's still a long ways to go.
But I remember, it does. I remember when they said, we have a great mental health counseling thing for officers because we have an EAP line. All you got to do is call this number.
Employee assistance line, yeah.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Employee assistance program,
But I've never felt overwhelmed with anything. That one scenario is the one that stands out in my mind as
but you
worst.
still got permanent pictures. We all do. Yeah. I can tell you there's just some permanent pictures that will never leave you, correct?
Decapitated heads,
stuff like that. They don't leave you.
Heads
they
blown off with shotguns that you wake up 2 nights later and you're
sometimes years. Yeah. Just depends. It just comes to you again. You remember shit. You're like, oh, I remember that.
Stuff that I've told my kids that I've seen stuff that I hope you never have to see.
And that's the normal public. That's what I say. That's what we do. We've seen enough things in our military too, and
absolutely.
We've seen more things than we should ever see than the human eyes were meant to see. And, that's why war and that kind of stuff takes a effect on people, because the human brain was just never meant to cope with that much tragedy. You know what I mean?
Huge prop to our military and our.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about our experiences. We're not meaning to discount any other, service industry, whether it's military or firefighters. That's not what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. But, obviously there's a lot going on for a lot of different services, but I can only speak as to what I've experienced, and you can transcribe that from the LEO to the victims of molestation and all that. I mean, it goes on, but I think that when this topic was brought up by her, I think it was the talk about how does the job affect her. I don't think, I really want to dwell or take this down to, how are we messed up or how are we really good as cops kind of deal. Because I don't think that
No, but
that's
she said,
where I want to
That's the
take
thing too,
it.
is like,
but-
I feel like when having these sorts of conversations, it's about educating and learning. You know, I never mean for some of this stuff to come across as negative and how being law enforcement is so bad because you're going to get fucked up in the head.
Right.
You know, you're going to see a lot of stuff. You know, it's not like that. And I feel like just talking about it can bring it to light. You know, that's like also saying, for example, people in the military who come out with PTSD and it's really, really bad for them. I feel like bringing this sort of mental health topic in general is really beneficial because I feel like it is something taboo that we don't talk about, not only just in law enforcement, but just in general. Like, why do we feel in the sense that mental health is so taboo? Why is it so bad to mentally take care of yourself? Because it goes back to also the idea that I said earlier is when you think of being healthy, you only think of physically. Physically, how are you doing? You know, is your heart working? Are your kidneys good? You know, how's your liver doing today?
they're tangible things.
Yeah, we don't think about mentally how you're doing up there, you know, because I feel like, again, being healthy is mentally and physically being 100%.
Yep.
You know, and how can you give 100% of yourself to not only just your career, but to in other relationships in your life, whether that's with like your significant other or with friendships or, you know, like your parent and children relationships. How can you give 100% of yourself to somebody when you yourself are not 100%?
How can I give 100%
Well said.
to my motorcycle if I'm truly not in love with my motorcycle?
Oh, geez. Here we go. Here we go. It's getting deep. Yeah, no. And I do want to tie it in. Yeah. And very interesting, you know, when you said some wise things there, briefly, you know, to have something, the best thing, and it's information. I said it on a podcast before, when I was on another podcast, Rob's, when he was interviewing me, you know, one of the things I always say is the best thing, because a lot of young cops don't do it, is you have to have extreme passions outside of law enforcement. And I'll tell you, law-abiding biker media here, although it's very tiresome working 2 full-time jobs, I'll tell you it's been one of the best things because I love helping bikers and it consumes me. And when I leave work, I literally don't think about work because I'm too busy doing this stuff. So those type of things for young officers, I always tell them, find yourself a passion that you're passionate about outside. And I know Rick works 2 full-time jobs too because he's running the store down there, and it keeps us. I mean, really, when you leave work, you know, you think about it less. I do because I'm busy. I'm like, okay, here's my other job. I got to help bikers and I need to make videos and I need to make podcasts and do all this. And I just completely forget about it. And then I go back to work and I'm back at work and I think about that. I give it 100%. So yeah, I think those are healthy
there's
things.
different things. I mean, I know guys that I work with that are like diehard fishermen during the fishing season.
Yeah, there you go.
Their
Yeah.
passion. And
Some don't have it and you know it takes it. You know who
And
those
there's-
people are. You're
There's
like,
hunters
dude.
and there's other guys that they are the baseball coach and they are the football or the basketball coach. And most of them do have. The ones that don't, you figure it out pretty quick.
Yep, they're the ones at the office on their days off,
they're the
taking
ones-
calls, doing work at home. That doesn't last very long.
They're the ones that complain that all they ever do is work and they need a break. And then you ask them what they did on their vacation and they're
Right.
like, oh, I mowed the grass, you know.
Right.
And, well,
I worked on my day off on my laptop. Yeah, you're like, seriously? Yeah. So
you got to have something.
Yep. Good. So let's, as we wind it down, if there's any other main points, we can always digress, but let's talk it into some things that, since we're talking about things that can help with that. I talked about this, and riding motorcycles for me was huge. Did you notice that at a young age that helped? And how did you notice that it helped him?
I feel like when I was younger, I mean, motorcycles have always been in the picture. You know, I mean, you can go back for, oh gosh, I forget how many years, but you can see a bunch of pictures of my sister and I on the back and, you know, taking pictures and always going to the dealership when he wants to go pick up a part or just go look, you know, but it never ends up really being looking. It's, you know, buying something.
I have a picture
Nicely
of her.
said.
I have a picture of her being less than 1 year old.
I do too with my youngest.
Being on a 1989 Harley Davidson Electric Classic at, I think it wasn't a Hogs and Dogs, but it was remember on 40th that McDonald's used to have like
they used to have the hot rod.
The hot rod
Saturdays.
deal.
Yeah.
And we came up from Zilla and sat there, and I have a picture of her wearing a pink dress with this big pink hat to keep the sun off of her.
Sun hat,
and
yeah.
she's sitting there on the bike. And so ever since she's been born, she's been involved in some way, shape, and she used to ride with me quite a bit. She hasn't ridden in several years, but bikes have always been. I took a 3-year hiatus after Mickey was born because I was writing so much and gone so much, and Cindy was just overwhelmed with 2 kids. She asked me to, can you slow down writing? And I said, if the bike's here, I cannot not write.
Right, yeah.
So I took a 3-year hiatus and went without a bike. And of course, that's how she ended up buying Chola for me, which wasn't Chola then. It was just
right. Didn't have a name yet. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I actually went 3 years, and then I just found something else. I went knee deep into golf and played golf 3 times a week. And then she's like, well, now all you're doing is gone golfing all the time. And I'm
that's the thing about law enforcement. We have to do something. Yeah, that's to get our mind off of. We can't sit around home and think about that stuff. So, yeah.
And again, that also, whether you want to admit it or not, but that also comes into having a healthy mental state, whether you want to believe it or not, whether it's golfing or riding bikes, or if you're that dude that likes to do triathlons, go on with your bad self. Personally, I cannot do that. I cannot run to save my life. Like, please do not try to attack me. I cannot run very fast, so please don't. But, and I think that also kind of goes into me, starting college. I feel like definitely it got hit pretty hard. After my parents kind of dropped me off, I remember getting a text that night from my mom, and she goes, your dad booked us a night at the casino. We're going to stay at the casino. And I was like, what in the hell? And they just went to the casino. And the next day, she sent me a picture after they went gambling. My dad went and bought a bunch of dip. And I was like, classy guys, and, after that, I tried to figure out mentally, how can I begin to take care of myself without going into these unhealthy things, And so being away from school and knowing that, my dad is gone all the time. I'll admit some days are harder than others, and it always makes me think a little bit more. My roommate and I, her and I are really into watching those like law enforcement shows. And it's funny because I'll be at home and we'll have them on the TV. My dad comes in and he'll just bitch and he'll be like, I deal with this every day. Why in the hell would I want to watch this?
That's not how they do it anyways.
Oh yeah. And then he'll sit down and he'll be like, okay, listen, that's not how I would do it. And then he come up with like some scenario on his own. And how would he do it? Because he's such the comedian and such the actor. And how would he portray, you know?
How in the hell on Live PD
Good
last
job.
night? Last night I watched some of Live PD, and they're
Love
like
Live
searching.
PD.
They're like
even know what that
searching
is.
cars, incident to arrest, and I'm like,
They
how-
can in other states still, dude.
Yeah, I'm like,
That's
How in
Washington.
the hell are you guys searching cars, incident to arrest?
Washington's
with
the only
Arizona
one.
versus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Only
he'll
in
just
Washington,
be like, why the hell are you, why would I want to watch this? I live it. And then 2 seconds later, he's sitting on the couch and he's like, what's the next one? Like commercial will go on. And he's like, what the hell? Like they're not done yet. And I'm like, well, according to A&E, we're taking a break. So I think you need to mentally time out, And so like my roommate and I will watch those, and there were a couple that we watched from, what's it called? Night Watch. We're super into Night Watch. That one's very good. And
I don't know any of these.
Night Watch? Oh, it's beautiful. It's based down in Louisiana, even though now it kind of moved to Tampa. And it just shows the stories of like EMTs, firefighters, law enforcement.
I love it.
I'm very extroverted.
Wonder
I think
where
you're
she
learning
got
very
that from,
quickly.
because your dad doesn't like to talk at all. He's a silent guy. He never talks.
No, but like it's a really good show, and a couple of them were dedicated towards officers that have, died in the line of action, and a couple of them, they made me upset. My roommate asked me, she was like, why are you tearing up? And, and I just told her, I was like, because it makes me think I'm 2 hours away from home, and it's, I could never imagine, being at school and getting that call from my mom that something had happened to my dad. I would never wish that upon my worst enemy. I mean, if it ever were to happen, I would hope to be home, but because I'm not the majority of the time, it's really hard. And a lot of those shows, they'll keep it real, and if like my roommate and my friends will ask me questions about that and like, I'll answer them to like the best of my abilities, but that's really hard too. That also goes into, being in college. I've seen a lot of stuff, I had a friend down the hall, back in November, she ended up getting raped and having to be there for that. And her, yelling at the law enforcement officers, telling them like, fuck off. No, I'm not going. And, I was the only person that could just get her to sit down and just listen to what the officers had to say. I told her, I said, think about if you were talking to my dad like this. I said, and they're just trying to help. They're not there to attack you or judge you. They're just there to help. And you have to listen to them. And eventually she ended up just kind of sitting down, taking a breath and just listening. And she had all her options laid out on the table, and obviously later that night, we ended up having to force her to get into the ambulance, because she ended up getting handed a drink and she ended up being drugged from it. And that's one thing, coming from a law enforcement family, is before I went to college, my parents made it very transparent of what can happen if I go out. And I remember my first time going out, it was like our welcome week. So we just moved in, we've been out of the house for a few days, and we went out to Greek Row. And I remember being in one of the Greek houses, and people were just passing around and packing all their sweet teas, their twisted teas and all these weird concoctions, their jungle juice and everything like that. And, and I had a couple of the brothers come up and they're like, hey girl, like take a sip, like share this with me. I can't finish it. And I would just have to be like, no, I'm good. Or, if I did choose to drink, I would always make sure where it's coming from. I feel like that's one of the biggest things that kids don't realize when they go to college is always know where your drinks are coming from. And granted, it's not right to drink underage, but am I going to sit here and act like I'm a perfect child? Absolutely not. I'll admit that I've drinking. I have, and I do it safely.
Yep.
I don't and I don't go overboard. I don't get hammered, but it's like, if I do drink, I socially drink, and in that situation, of course I did drink that night, but it was like, I knew where the alcohol was coming from. Plus it was free. So that was really nice too.
It's always nice. You can drink for
free booze.
You can drink for free your entire college career being a female. I'm telling you.
That's what I'm saying, and then of course,
Rick shaking his head over there,
and I've never been in a situation like that, and being with a bunch of those brothers and them, kind of being touchy a little bit, you had to learn, how to say no and how to, and if you're uncomfortable in a situation, you leave. And that's what I did that night. My friends and I got very uncomfortable, and we learned just to get out, just to leave. And, free booze is not worth it. It is not worth it. And we ended up going to one more house, and all they had was like really shitty Rolling Rock, because they're like, free beers on us. And he hands me a beer. And I'm like, first of all, absolutely hate beer. Second of all, this is Rolling Rock. Like, if you're really going to sit here, I was like, if you're trying to be a big baller over here, like, what in the hell are you handing me a Rolling Rock? I literally took one sip,
cheap
almost
bastard.
gagged. I was like, what in the hell? And I literally, they had like a sofa out, and I put it right behind the sofa. And I don't even know if they ever found it. I literally took one tiny sip. Nope, done. And then we danced for a little bit, and it wasn't worth it. And that's the thing too, is I also tell incoming freshmen to colleges, the parties aren't worth it. You can have just a good time being in your dorm room sober, or saving up your money, or checking your budget and going out to dinner with some friends.
Yeah, just a couple friends. I agree.
Personally, I think that's a lot more fun than sitting there and getting hammered, going down to the Greek houses, and doing that, because I did it one time because I wanted to learn from it, and I wanted to know like what would happen and how I would handle myself in that situation. And I learned, there were a couple of times where I kind of got nervous and I didn't know what to say, because I didn't want to offend some of the brothers when they were giving me drinks or offering me dances, and I think just being out, because your parents can tell you all this stuff, but until you actually do it yourself, you'll never know. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing why I hate like helicopter parents, for example. Don't control your kid. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. So that's why, especially in college, I tried that out, and I found out I'm not really a big fan of it. Yeah, it's fun to dress up and take pictures and go out, but is it really worth it, to get out there and get free booze, to end up being like one of my friends who ended up getting raped that night? Just stuff like that, or, getting super involved into drugs. I had somebody that I know that ended up getting arrested, and he ended up having a federal charge on him, and they all took shrooms that night. And one of his buddies didn't finish his 8th of shrooms, and it was left there, and somebody was vaping in the room, and the fire alarm went off. The cops were called, and it was just such a dirty situation, and to this day, he regrets doing it.
Yeah.
Because he was even considering at a point in time going into law enforcement, and he had asked me what I thought about that. And I had told him, I said, first of all, it's a very difficult job. Well, yeah, I was like, this was before even all that.
The shrooms, bro.
Yeah, right. Hey, Cheyenne.
Why do you sound like the guy
Cheyenne. Cheyenne, why don't you listen to me? Hey, you're listening to me. Cheyenne.
Yes.
Do you think I'd be good in law enforcement?
No, because you sound like a fuckhead.
Cheyenne, yes. I imagine myself. I watch TV. I think I can do it. Hey, what's that?
You sound like the guy from like Alaskan Bush people.
That's a unicorn over there. That's
Trippy,
a motherfucking double rainbow, man.
Trippy, man. And he was somebody who's very close to me, and I had asked him, and I talked to him about this podcast. I said, can I bring up your story? And he's like, yeah, as long as you don't say my name,
Yeah.
He's like, he's kind of like me, where he wants to educate people based off of his mistakes, and because of that, he ended up getting arrested with a federal charge of possession. It was also in a baggie, and he wouldn't say where it was from. And so he also got charged with the intent to distribute. And then one of the guys in the room also just bought weed. He literally just bought it and then came over, and the cops took it. And his friend was like pissed. He was like, man, it's my fresh weed and all this. And I'm like, are you really that dumb to try and sneak weed into a college dorm when little do you know the alarm's going to go off and your weed's going to be snatched?
Right.
And so now to this day, he's going through the court process. And, when he had brought up to me that he was thinking about going to law enforcement, again, this was before the shrooms, before any of that, he had only, smoked weed occasionally, drink occasionally. And I had told him, I was like, well, first of all, you'd probably have to cut the weed out. I said, the drinking, if you do it moderately, go on with your bad self, but I'm not going to judge you. I said, and another thing too is I said, personally, I think you should build your career first, then have a family. I said, I think it's harder going from having a family going into law and then just going straight into law enforcement, because you do have the family ties and the things like that. And it's hard, balancing going to the academy and then your kids are at home and all that stuff. So I told him, I said, personally, if you're going to do it, just go straight to the academy, get that done, build your career. And then if you find somebody, along the way, then, make sure that they know what goes into this type of career, and so hopefully by telling his story, people can continue to learn why drugs aren't all that cool and drinking's all that lit, in college, because it's really not. Call me old school, and I say that all the time to my friends. I'm like, call me old school, but I would, rather, go to dinner and do something fun in the neighboring big city than, get dressed up, go down Greek Row and end up having guys touch me and, get bombarded by free drinks and, you end up leaving and you smell like ass because you're next to Joe Schmo who did not shower that day and you end up smelling like him and you're like, yikes, and so just
good. Wise, dude. Let's do this. Let's thank and then we'll wind it down.
Yeah, let's wind it down.
We got to thank the following people. Of course, we want you as a patron. We'd love to have a patron and get to know you better in the private Facebook group, get you some benefits, but hey, the only way you can support us right now is through a flat donation. We certainly accept those and do appreciate them. Kevin Chase of Franklinville, New York. Carl Fisher of Seaboard, North Carolina, asked a question in our contact form and left us a donation. And Tony Carbone of Boynton Beach, Florida. Thank you. lawabidingbiker.com/donate is how those folks left that donation. And we thank you so much. So let's wind it down with some last thoughts and take it out. Do you have any last? That was awesome. You're amazing. Wise for 19. You should be very proud of that, Big Daddy
you.
Kane. Seriously. Because I have never talked to you this long. So that's what the mics are good for, right? I got to learn a whole bunch about you, and I wished you'd have told me more really crappy stories about your dad, but that I could make sound clips off of them.
I can always talk about how I was at like a car wash raising money for
You're
cheer.
Dumb.
And no, he literally like pulled up in his squad car, got out, and he's in uniform. And he's like, hello, Cheyenne. And I'm sitting there washing a car, like looking greasy. And I'm like, hello. And he's like, come wash my car. Take a picture. I'm like, Dad, are you literally kidding me? He's like, come take a picture with your dad. Are you embarrassed? Like, come on. And of course I felt embarrassed and I was like, well, shit, well now I got to do it. And I went over to like pose for stuff, or like we would be at events and like, just like, I don't know, or he'd like lean in and be like, yo man, I really got to take a shit. I'll be back, man. And I'm just like, what the fuck? And then these people be like, oh, you guys having secret talk? And I'm just like, no, he just said he had to take a fat shit. He'll be right back. Give him some moments.
That sounds like Big Daddy, man. All right, Rick, do you have anything else before we take it out of here, brother? Well, okay, that's all he did.
Oh, he's laughing too hard because he knows that he probably has to shit now.
It is 420. He might have just taken a toke over there. And
hey.
I didn't even know what 420 was until I was a cop.
Yeah, geez, dude. Well,
blaze it and praise it, man.
Yeah. Now all the kids know. Yeah, all the kids know.
Well,
all
today
right.
420 lands on a Saturday.
Yeah, 420 is today. Yeah, it does land on a Saturday. Yes.
And if you got married today and you were married for 50 years, your anniversary would be 420-69.
Oh,
so if anybody wants to legally marry me today, those probably come out too late, but 420, best anniversary. Yeah. Props to you guys who actually go through with that.
No doubt. Well, awesome. Thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it. And you can see, I could keep going. We're at an hour 20. Can you believe that?
Oh, wow.
That's how fast they go. They go quick. And man, I love talking. I love these kind of episodes because you can just roll with it. So, Big Daddy Kane, you can't do the same one. What do you want to do for?
Let's do a call to action for the Bike Bright.
You the man.
Bike Bright, spray wash, motorcycle cleaner, and degreaser, motorcycle wet wash. Absolutely the best wet wash motorcycle cleaner on the market. Bike Bright, tried and tested by the law-abiding biker crew, and is our #1 go-to wet wash motorcycle cleaner. Its super foaming triple action formula gets in all cracks and crevices.
You know how we don't like dirty cracks and crevices?
That's right. You know
cracks.
how we don't like dirty cracks and crevices. Easy as pie, spray it on, let it soak, and rinse it off, bikeaholics. Then get out there and spend more time riding. Check out the whole line of Bike Bright products for your specific motorcycle cleaning and detailing needs. Head over to our store, lawabidingbiker.com/store, and I have it in stock, and we're ready to ship direct to you now. And don't forget to pick up a bottle of cleaner while you're there, maintaining your bike of Bug Slide, waterless motorcycle cleaner while you're there, maintaining your bike in those wet washes. And this is probably a good time to mention that now the new Bike Bright degreaser, the package comes in a beautiful box and with a sponge included.
Nice. It's a different variation that we're now carrying. I saw them down there.
Yeah, so instead of just the bottle, it's the same size bottle, but for a very slight charge more, it's not very much, it includes a sponge with it. And so we have that available, and we have the new Moto Shine, which is available, and some wipes and you name it. So check it out, people.
Yeah, heck yeah, we love that Bike Bright wet wash solution. That's all we use on our whole police motorcycle fleet. Love it. Love it. Foams up, and it lasts a while. You don't have to use a ton of it, so it works well at just melting those bugs off and spray them down. So there you go, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, we have our official app. Whether you're on, whether you want to listen on an Android or iPhone, iOS, we've got different apps. Whether you want to listen on iTunes or Stitcher, just head over to lawabidingbiker.com/app, and there's a bunch of links where, depending on your device and how you want to listen, that's where you can get it. Of course, our official app is over there too, which makes it really easy to listen. And you get the show notes right there in the app. So there you go.
And if you want to support us, don't forget we also have an affiliate with Amazon. No additional cost to you, but we get a small commission for each sale. Bookmark it in your web browser now. It's lawabidingbiker.com/Amazon. So you're already shopping there, so go ahead and go through our affiliate, and we get a small little commission for it.
Doesn't matter what you buy, as long as you go through that affiliate, we're getting a small kickback and help support the show. So thanks a lot. And Big Daddy Kane, you've got a beautiful ride home. He's got about a little over an hour, and it is just a gorgeous 70-degree day out here. So
yep, I've gotten some miles in this week. I've been very fortunate.
Thanks for sticking out 2 of them, brother.
Yep. See ya.